Okay, imagine this. You walk into your office boardroom, and there it is, right? That sleek, super modern, smart TV. It's perfectly positioned for presentations, video calls, maybe just showing company news. It just sort of blends in. You probably don't even think about it much. It's just part of the tech setup.
Absolutely. Seems indispensable.
But what if I told you that very TV, the one designed for convenience, might be quietly connected to the internet, maybe running ancient, unpatched firmware and, well, basically wide open to exploitation, serving as this almost invisible gateway for a potentially devastating cyber attack. It sounds dramatic, I know, like something out of a movie.
Right, like a cybersecurity thriller.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But this isn't fiction. This is increasingly the stark reality of our connected business environments, where the promise of automation and efficiency from these Internet of Things or IoT devices, well, that often comes with these huge but frequently overlooked security trade-offs.
Yeah, that convenience factor often masks the risk.
And we're not just talking smart TVs, are we? Think about smart locks on the doors, the thermostats controlling the temperatures, those HD security cameras everywhere.
Even the coffee machine.
Right. Even that fancy networked coffee machine in the break room that knows when you need more beans. Every single one of these seemingly harmless devices, is really a tiny computer.
That's the key point right there. They're computers.
Quietly integrated into how we work every day. And because they're connected, they can become this sort of silent, pervasive, weak spot, like the soft underbelly of your whole business network.
It's actually amazing how deeply embedded these devices have become, almost without us noticing. But like you said, what's often missing is the security scrutiny that should go along with it.
Yeah.
Businesses are, rushing to adopt these technologies. The benefits are obvious: efficiency, automation, better experiences.
Makes sense.
But the security side of things, it just hasn't kept pace, not at all. And this creates these huge blind spots, these unexplored areas in a company's digital defenses that, frankly, the bad guys are increasingly eager to poke around in.
Okay, so for this deep dive, what have we been looking at?
Well, we've pulled together insights from a really comprehensive research paper, an engaging video script, and also a pretty compelling documentary script. And the interesting thing is, they all point to the same critical message, this silent, growing cyber threat from Office IoT.
Right.
So our mission today is really to dig into this material, pull out the most important nuggets of knowledge, the key insights to give you, our listener, a really solid and hopefully actionable understanding of this threat landscape. It's complex, sure, but often underestimated.
So connecting the dots, basically.
Exactly. We're going to connect those dots, show how these everyday conveniences can actually flip, and become critical vulnerabilities, like leaving an open invitation for cybercriminals.
That really drives home just how widespread this could be.
For someone listening who maybe doesn't fully grasp the sheer scope, can you break down what we mean by an IoT device in a typical office setting? We hear Internet of Things thrown around a lot. What are we actually talking about?
Sure thing. At the most basic level, right, IoT devices in a business context are, well, they're electronic hardware, often quite small. And they're embedded with sensors, some specialized software, and crucially, connectivity features.
The internet part of Internet of Things.
Precisely. Those features let them collect and exchange data over networks. Could be the big, wide internet or just your local office network. They're specifically designed for remote access, for automating tasks, for collecting data in real time. And that's why they're so valuable to businesses, obviously. But the critical thing to grasp, as you mentioned earlier, is that these aren't just simple appliances anymore. They are miniature computers, often running surprisingly sophisticated operating systems, even if you never see a screen or interact with them directly. When you start listing examples beyond the TV, like coffee machines, lighting systems, it really makes you look around the office differently, doesn't it? It's kind of mind-boggling how many miniature computers are just quietly doing their thing. Are attackers focusing more on specific types now, or is it still the more obvious stuff?
Well, the list is always growing, and what counts as obvious changes pretty fast. The sources we looked at give a really rich and honestly slightly unsettling inventory of what you might find.
Right.
You've got the ones we've mentioned, smart TVs, interactive displays for meetings, but then digital assistants, maybe an Alexa for Business, managing meeting rooms or helping with scheduling. Always listening, always connected.
Right, the microphones.
Exactly. Then wireless printers and scanners. They often have their own IP address sitting right on the network. IP security cameras meant to keep you safe, but ironically can become a huge vulnerability themselves. Smart locks, access control systems, even the building's core systems are getting connected. HVAC, thermostats, networked lighting that adjusts automatically, environmental sensors tracking air quality, temperature.
Oh, well.
But the real eye-opener, as you hinted, is the stuff you really don't expect. Networked coffee machines, ordering beans, smart vending systems, maybe even smart water coolers. These aren't just gadgets, they're nodes on your network, often put in place without a second thought about security. And that's exactly why they become such attractive targets for attackers.
That point you made that every device is basically a computer that's really sticking with me. It leads to a pretty big question. If we know they're computers, why do so many manufacturers, and then businesses too, treat them so differently when it comes to security? It feels like a massive gaping hole.
It absolutely is. They're under intense market pressure.
Right, competition.
Huge competition. Their main goals are keeping costs down, making things super easy to use, and getting the product out the door as fast as possible. Speed to market is key.
Okay.
Security. Well, security often ends up being an afterthought, if it's even thought about much in the initial design phase at all. This leads to, shortcuts in secure software development, weak or non-existent update mechanisms, and often very little commitment to long-term support. Basically, many of these devices are, frankly, not designed for security.
So it's built-in vulnerability, almost by design philosophy.
Pretty much. This design philosophy, driven by profit and market demand, is exactly what creates that soft underbelly for business networks we talked about. Think about it. Adding strong security features, doing rigorous testing, committing to maybe 5 or 10 years of firmware updates, making sure every single device has a unique, strong default password.
That all costs money and takes time.
Exactly. It adds significant cost, adds complexity to manufacturing, it slows down development, bumps up the retail price, makes it less competitive. So manufacturers often take the easier path. The result, a flood of devices that are inherently vulnerable. And for cybercriminals, this is just a gold mine. They're constantly scanning, looking for these weak points, knowing that countless businesses have unknowingly welcomed these insecure devices onto their networks. It's systemic. It's not just one or two bad apples.
All right, so we get what these devices are, and we understand the sort of built-in weakness. Let's peel back another layer now and talk about the specific key vulnerabilities, the things that turn these convenient gadgets into silent backdoors. And we have to start with one of the most, shockingly simple but incredibly common issues. Default credentials. This feels like Security 101, but it's still a massive problem, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It's fundamental, yet it continues to plague the whole IoT world. Our sources are really clear on this. A vast, almost unbelievable number of IoT devices ship straight from the factory with easily guessable, or worse, publicly known default usernames and passwords.
Like what? Give me an example.
We're talking super common combinations like admin for both the username and password, or maybe user in 1234. It's not just weak, it's basically leaving the door wide open with the key in the lock.
Wow.
And the most alarming part, in a terrifying number of cases, these defaults are never changed. Not by the person who installs it, not by the IT team managing it. So an attacker doesn't need fancy hacking tools. They can just find these default credentials in the manual, or more likely, do a quick search online on forums or these big credential databases.
It's like moving into a new office building where every single lock is still set to the factory default, 000 or something, and the master key is just hanging on a hook by the front door labeled access all areas. It's not hacking. It's just walking in.
Exactly right. It makes them incredibly easy targets for things like brute force attacks, where automated tools just try common password combinations over and over until one works. Or even simpler, credential stuffing, where attackers use lists of usernames and passwords leaked from other data breaches because, people reuse passwords everywhere.
Oh, right.
So, yeah, a compromised IoT device isn't always some super sophisticated attack. Often, it's just someone literally logging in. And this vulnerability persists because manufacturers often see it as a convenience feature for setup. Ease of use trumps baseline security. They ship millions like this, knowing most won't be changed, creating this huge, predictable target that requires minimal effort for an attacker to hit.
Okay, so that's the open door. But if that wasn't bad enough, then we have the problem of, persistent weakness. This really connects back to those systemic issues you mentioned. Let's talk about the huge impact of not getting regular firmware updates.
Yeah, this point is absolutely critical because it shows this systemic lack of ongoing security care built into the device's whole life, unlike your laptop or your phone or the company servers, which get security patches and updates pretty regularly, right?
Usually, yeah. Or they should.
Right. IoT devices, though, they frequently go unpatched for years.
Mm-hmm.
Some vendors, honestly, seem to treat updates like a one-off thing at launch, not an ongoing promise. They might abandon support for older models pretty quickly after release. It's almost like buying a car, and the manufacturer says, okay, here are the keys. Oh, and by the way, we're only patching security flaws for the first 6 months. After that, you're on your own.
That's not great.
It's terrible.
Yeah.
Because without those critical updates, known security flaws remain exploitable forever. Researchers are always finding new vulnerabilities, but if the manufacturer isn't pushing out patches, or if the business isn't applying them, those flaws become permanent, static targets, just sitting there waiting.
Like a known weak spot in a wall that you just never fix.
Precisely. And this creates a massive headache for businesses regarding lifecycle management. What do you do with devices that the vendor doesn't support anymore, but are otherwise working fine? Do you rift them out, replace them, spend all that money? Or do you leave them there knowing they're a ticking time bomb on your network?
Tough choice.
It is.
Right.
And often there's no easy answer. So unfortunately, many businesses just leave them, leaving themselves wide open to known, easily exploitable vulnerabilities.
So we've got devices with easy logins, known flaws that don't get fixed. But what happens when an attacker actually gets control of one? How does that turn into a direct threat to the business's really sensitive stuff, like data and critical systems? This brings us to the danger of unencrypted communication and, maybe even worse, broad network access.
Yeah, this is where the theoretical risk becomes very real, very fast. First off, many IoT devices just by default transmit data in plain text, over the internet, or even just across your local office network.
Plain text, so no encryption at all.
Often, none. Which makes it alarmingly easy for an attacker who's already got a foothold somewhere on your network, maybe through another compromised device, to just eavesdrop and intercept sensitive information. Think about audio from a smart speaker in a meeting room, or video feeds from an IP camera, maybe even login tokens for internal systems, all just floating around unencrypted, totally exposed.
Wow. That's bad enough on its own.
It is, but the danger ramps up massively because these devices are frequently plugged into the exact same corporate network that holds your crown jewels, your sensitive business systems, your critical files, your valuable IP, your main servers.
Okay. I see where this is going.
This is the real existential threat. Once an attacker compromises an IoT device, let's say, your smart coffee machine, because it had a default password, they don't just stop there. That device becomes what we call a lateral movement pivot.
A pivot, like a stepping stone.
Exactly. They use that coffee machine's network connection, its IP address, its access rights on that network segment as a base camp. From there, they start scanning inside your network, looking for other vulnerable machines, probing your file servers for open shares, maybe trying to sniff out passwords from other devices they can now see internally.
So they're moving deeper in.
Deeper and deeper, pivoting from that initial weak point into your more sensitive areas, mapping your internal network, identifying the high-value targets. So that seemingly harmless smart coffee machine in the break room, it could become the direct, unnoticed bridge to your client database, your financial records, maybe your secret product design.
Well, you wouldn't even know because the coffee machine isn't running antivirus.
Precisely. These devices are often invisible to traditional security tools. No antivirus, often very poor logging capabilities that would trigger alerts in your normal security monitoring systems, your SIEM.
That's a terrifying thought. An attacker using your coffee machine to crawl through your network, and you're completely unaware. Which leads us straight to the next big vulnerability, this limited visibility and logging. If these devices are basically silent, how on earth do you defend against something you can't even see?
Exactly. It really brings up this fundamental question of, control and awareness in your own environment. The hard truth is, most IoT devices just aren't built to play nice with sophisticated security information and event management systems, the SIEM tools most businesses rely on.
Okay.
And unlike your servers or workstations, they usually lack decent logging capabilities, the kind that would flag suspicious activity. And they definitely don't have endpoint protection like antivirus software, which you'd expect on any normal computer.
So what's the practical result of that?
The practical result is huge. It means any malicious activity, any unauthorized access originating from that IoT device can go completely unnoticed for potentially a very long time.
Weeks.
Easily. Imagine an attacker silently pulling data off your network, or mapping out all your internal systems, all operating from, say, your networked smart lighting system. Your IT security team could be totally blind to it. There's no alert, no log entry that looks weird.
Yeah.
These devices are literally designed to blend in, right? To do their job without fuss. But that very characteristic becomes their biggest security weakness. It lets attackers operate under the radar, gathering intelligence, stealing data, or maybe setting up a much bigger, more devastating attack later on, all while remaining completely undetected. It's like having a digital ghost in the machine, moving around freely.
Okay, it's one thing to talk about these vulnerabilities in theory, but how do these compromises actually happen in the real world? How do cyber criminals take advantage of these silent backdoors to cause real damage? Let's get into some real-world attack vectors, starting with the, well, chilling simplicity of just scanning and exploiting.
Right. This is where we move from the what if to the how it happens. Cybercriminals aren't just sitting back waiting for someone to click a bad link anymore. They are actively, constantly scanning the internet 24/7, looking specifically for exposed and vulnerable IoT devices.
How do they do that?
They use specialized tools. One of the most well-known is called Shodan. You can think of Shodan like Google, but instead of searching for websites, it searches for internet-connected devices.
Okay.
It lets attackers find vulnerable devices in real time. They can search for open ports, identify specific types of devices like cameras or printers, find out what software version they're running, even pinpoint their physical location sometimes.
Sounds like a shopping list for hackers.
In a way, yes. It's not just a random phishing trick. They're casting this massive digital net, constantly trawling, and your unpatched smart thermostat, or that digital display in the boardroom with the default password, it's like a flashing light basically waving a flag saying, hey, I'm over here, and I'm probably insecure.
Okay, so they find a device using something like Shodan. What happens next?
Once they find a potential target, they usually follow a depressingly simple playbook. First, they'll try those easy default credentials we talked about, or maybe credentials leaked from other breaches.
Hoping someone reused password 123?
Exactly. If that works, or if they find an unpatched, known vulnerability where an exploit is readily available online, they can then upload malicious firmware or their own code onto the device. That gives them full control.
Okay, they're in. Now what?
Now, that compromised IoT device becomes their foothold, their pivot point inside your network. From there, they can start that lateral movement we discussed, scanning internally for more valuable targets, file servers, financial systems, employee databases.
What's the end goal usually?
It varies. It could be stealing sensitive information client lists, IP, financial data, or maybe even worse, installing ransomware on your internal servers, encrypting everything and demanding a huge payment. Basically bringing your entire operation to a grinding halt. And the really scary part, often there's no alarm bell, no antivirus alert, because as we keep saying, these devices just don't have those standard protections.
That's a perfect lead-in to one of the most, well, famous real-world examples that really drives this point home. It shows it's not just theory. These are real disasters waiting to happen, often from the most unexpected places. Tell us about the casino fish tank story.
Ah, yes, the casino fish tank. It's probably the single best cautionary tale out there for IoT security. It's just such a perfect example of how even the most seemingly trivial, unimportant device can become a catastrophic entry point.
So what happened?
Well, this was a real case. A major casino got breached, but not through some super complex hack on their main servers, not through a clever phishing email to an executive. Nope. The way the attackers got in. It was through a smart fish tank thermostat connected to the internet.
A fish tank thermostat.
Seriously, think about it. This thermostat was installed, presumably, to keep the temperature right for the fish in some big, fancy, decorative tank in the casino lobby.
Okay.
It was connected to the internet so someone could monitor or adjust it remotely. But crucially, it was connected to the casino's main corporate network, not isolated. Big uh-oh. Attackers found a vulnerability in this seemingly harmless thermostat. They exploited it, got control, and then used it as their pivot point, their foothold inside the network. From there, they managed to move deeper into the casino's internal systems, navigating across different network segments, and eventually they got their hands on and exfiltrated a significant amount of valuable customer data, reportedly including info on their high roller clients.
Wow. All starting from a fish tank.
Exactly. It's such a powerful aha moment for businesses. It just slams home the point that any internet-connected device, no matter how small or unimportant it seems, can be a critical security risk. It really highlights that hackers don't care how useful the device is. They care how easy it is to break into. This wasn't theory. It was a real costly breach stemming from the most unlikely place. It's a constant reminder. If it's connected, it's a potential vulnerability. Even the fish tank.
So, given these sneaky attack methods and these built-in weaknesses, what are the actual tangible consequences for a business when these IoT devices are left unsecured and eventually get compromised?
Okay.
The fallout goes way beyond just the device itself, right? It hits the bottom line, legal standing, and maybe most importantly, reputation. Let's start with the big one everyone fears.
Yeah.
Data breaches.
Yeah, the risk of data breaches is absolutely the core threat here. Unsecured IoT devices, as we've seen, are basically open pathways for attackers to get in and steal your most confidential stuff. Documents, sensitive customer information, internal emails, proprietary designs.
Everything.
Pretty much anything valuable that resides on your network. It's not just about losing a few files. It could be a catastrophic loss of intellectual property, your entire client list, financial records, employee PII, trade secrets. Think about it. All that data you've worked so hard to protect, maybe locked down behind firewalls and complex access controls, it can just walk out the digital door via your smart lighting system or a Wi-Fi projector in a meeting room that nobody thought to secure properly.
Because it was a blind spot.
Exactly, a blind spot in the security strategy. And it's often a silent leak. You might not even know it's happened until that data pops up on the dark web or is used in follow-up attacks against your customers or employees. The consequences can be immediate and devastating.
And beyond just losing the data itself, there's this whole cascade of legal and financial trouble waiting, right? It's not just the direct damage, but dealing with regulators afterwards can be a nightmare.
That's absolutely right. And it's something businesses often underestimate. What's really fascinating and scary is how quickly something as seemingly minor as an unsecured smart display can put a company squarely in violation of major data protection laws.
Like GDPR.
Exactly. Think GDPR in Europe, HIPAA for healthcare data in the U.S., various state laws like the CCPA in California. These regulations have incredibly strict rules about how businesses must handle sensitive data, protect it, and report breaches if they happen. Now, IoT devices, which, as we've established, often lack good logging, visibility, and security controls, when they get compromised, they create these massive gaps in your compliance posture. A breach that starts with an unsecured IoT device can expose your business to huge legal risks. We're talking hefty fines that can easily run into the millions depending on how bad the breach was and how much data got out.
So it's not just the data loss, it's the fines piling on top.
Precisely. It's about the entire legal framework you operate under. And these unmanaged, often invisible devices can completely undermine all your efforts to stay compliant with those critical, legally binding regulations.
Okay, so data is walking out the door, regulators are knocking on it. But beyond those direct costs and legal headaches, there's the more subtle but maybe even more damaging long-term impact of financial loss and just crushing your reputation. This really feels like a double whammy.
Oh, it absolutely is. The financial fallout from an IoT-initiated breach can be severe and come from multiple angles. You could be dealing with a ransomware attack, locking up your systems, and demanding payment. You've got those potentially crippling non-compliance fines we just mentioned. Plus, there's significant productivity loss during the downtime while you try to recover.
Recovery isn't cheap either, I imagine.
Not at all. Recovery often means bringing in expensive forensic investigators, incident response teams, rebuilding systems from scratch. But maybe even more damaging in the long run is the hit to your brand, your reputation.
Yeah.
Think about it. A breach, especially one that happened because of something as seemingly simple and basic as a smart TV or a connected thermostat. It sends a terrible message to your customers, your partners, the public. It basically says you don't have a handle on even fundamental security.
They got hacked through a coffee machine. Doesn't inspire confidence.
Exactly. Rebuilding that trust can take years. And honestly, some businesses never fully recover from that kind of reputational damage. So yeah, it's not just losing data or paying fines. It's losing money, losing trust, and potentially losing your business's standing and future in the market. It hits the very core of your brand's integrity.
And besides the money and reputation, there's also the very real threat of just messing up your day-to-day work. Operational disruption. Because these devices are often part of how things get done, right? A compromise can actively stop things from working.
Exactly. And this brings up a really important question. Are you truly in control of your own operations if the very devices you brought in to make things smoother could actually be turned against you?
Right.
Devices compromised by malware or actively controlled by attackers might just stop working properly. That could be a minor inconvenience, or it could cause significant outages. Imagine your networked HVAC system being messed with to make the office unbearable, or your smart locks being disabled, creating physical security risks, or just stopping people from getting into work.
Or worse.
Or worse, yeah. Compromised devices could be actively used to disrupt critical business processes. Think about a smart inventory system being tampered with, or sensors in an automated manufacturing line being messed up. The impact could be immediate and severe, bringing productivity to a halt. The very seamless integration that makes IoT so appealing also makes it a powerful tool for causing operational chaos if it's not secured. It exposes a deep vulnerability in how your business actually functions day to day.
Okay, so after exploring all these deep vulnerabilities and the truly devastating risks they pose, the critical question has to be, how do we actually fix this? How do we turn this awareness into action? What are the best practices for securing IoT in your business? How can you really take back control? Let's start with what many experts say is the single most important step, network segmentation. This isn't just a good idea, right? It's more like your digital firewall.
It really is the foundational pillar. You absolutely have to do it. Implementing network segmentation isn't just a suggestion, it's essential. All your IoT devices must be put on a separate network segment. Usually this means a separate VLAN, a virtual local area network, or maybe a dedicated physical subnet.
Okay, break that down. What does that actually achieve? Like putting them in a separate room?
That's a great analogy. Think of your main corporate network as your whole office building.
Okay.
Your critical servers, your sensitive data that's all in the locked executive suites, the vault, your IoT devices, the smart TVs, coffee machines, cameras, they're like guests or maybe temporary contractors. You wouldn't just give them a key card with access to everywhere, especially the vault to a separate way. Putting them on a separate VLAN is exactly like putting all those potentially risky guests or contractors in a separate wing of the building,
Right.
away from your valuables.
Okay, got it. And why is that so critical?
The why is absolutely paramount. It isolates them. It separates them from your critical systems, your sensitive data storage. This severely limits the damage if one of those IoT devices does get compromised. If an attacker gets control of a device on the IoT VLAN, they're basically contained within that segment.
Step in the guest wing.
Exactly. They're stuck in the desk wing. They can't even see your financial servers on the main network, let alone try to access your HR database or your customer records. Now, this requires proper configuration of your network switches and routers. It takes some effort, but it's a fundamental step. It immediately makes an attacker's job much harder. They can't just log into a smart TV and be inside your main network. They now have to figure out how to break through multiple network barriers. Without segmentation, a compromised smart device is a direct highway into your entire kingdom.
Okay, so building that digital moat with segmentation is job number one. Once that's in place, the next logical step seems to be strengthening the defenses of the devices within that moat. How do we go about hardening these devices, making sure they aren't the easy targets, the low-hanging fruit?
Right, and these are really fundamental security hygiene steps. Things you should do for any connected device, but they get overlooked so often with IoT. First, and you need to do this immediately, is change all default credentials. Right out of the box.
No admin me.
Absolutely not. Every single IoT device needs a unique, strong password the moment it's installed. Forget easy stuff. Use a password manager to generate complex, random passwords and store them securely. Especially for any device that has administrative access, make that password long and unique.
Okay, what else?
Next, you need to be proactive about disabling unused features. Lots of smart devices come packed with features. Bluetooth, maybe voice recognition, remote access through some cloud service that seem cool but aren't actually needed for how you're using them in the business.
Right.
If your smart TV has Bluetooth but you only use it for wired presentations, turn the Bluetooth off. If a digital assistant has voice features you don't need for its specific task, disable them. Our sources are really clear on this. Every extra feature is a new attack vector. It's just another potential door for attackers that you probably don't need open.
Makes sense. Minimize the attack surface.
Exactly. And lastly, and this is crucial, you must prioritize applying firmware and software updates regularly. Unlike your computer, IoT updates are often manual, sometimes hard to find, or just don't happen automatically. You have to actively check for updates from the manufacturer and apply them as soon as they're out.
What about automatic updates?
Enable automatic updates if the device supports it and you've tested it, doesn't break anything. But here's the tough part for businesses. If a device is no longer supported by the vendor, meaning no more security patches are coming, ever, you have to replace it, period. Leaving an unsupported device on your network, even segmented, is just asking for trouble. Any new vulnerability found will remain unpatched forever. It requires ongoing vigilance, not just a one-time setup.
Okay, so it's about being proactive with the devices themselves, locking them down, keeping them updated, but it's also about keeping an eye on what those devices are actually doing on your network, right? This brings us to restricting their access and continuously monitoring them, like making sure they only do what they're supposed to and watching them closely.
Absolutely, host. This is where you shift from just setting things up securely to actively defending them. First, you really need to restrict internet access for these IoT devices whenever possible. Ask yourself, does this smart thermostat really need full unrestricted access to the entire internet? Probably not.
What should it have access to?
Maybe it just needs to talk to one specific cloud service for weather data or remote control commands. If that's the case, use your firewall rules to block everything else. Only allow the specific communication it needs. Devices that don't need external internet access at all shouldn't have it, period. This drastically shrinks their potential to be used in attacks or to call home to malicious servers.
Okay, cut off unnecessary chatter. Then what?
Then you absolutely must enable monitoring and logging. Use the tools you likely already have, your firewalls, network monitoring systems, maybe an intrusion detection system or IDS, to actively watch the traffic going to and from your IoT devices on their segmented network.
What are you looking for?
Anomalies. Anything weird? Like if your smart coffee machine suddenly tries to connect to an internal file server, that's a huge red flag.
Yeah.
Or if an IP camera starts trying to send data to some unknown IP address in another country, that needs to be flagged and investigated immediately. These alerts are your early warning system. They tell you if a device might be compromised or is acting maliciously.
Got it. And there was one more piece to this.
Yes, a critical organizational step that often gets missed. Maintain a comprehensive inventory. You need to create and meticulously keep updated a full list of all IoT devices on your network.
What info should be in that inventory?
Things like its physical location, the exact model number, the current firmware version it's running, who the vendor is, and maybe who's responsible for managing it. This isn't just paperwork. It's incredibly helpful for managing updates and replacements, that whole lifecycle thing. And if a breach does happen, having that inventory is absolutely invaluable for incident response. You simply can't secure what you don't know you have. This proactive visibility, knowing what's on your network, is truly power.
That idea of a full inventory is really key, isn't it? It highlights how security needs to start even before a device walks in the door. Which brings us neatly to procurement policy. Like you said earlier, why wait for a breach to think about security?
Precisely. Building security into your purchasing process is proactive defense. It can save you so many headaches later on. Our sources really stress the importance of having a solid procurement policy specifically for IoT devices.
What does that look like in practice?
It means you only buy IoT devices that meet certain minimum security standards that you define beforehand. Before you even consider buying a device, you should be looking for ones that support encryption out of the box, that have features like secure boot, which helps prevent malicious firmware from being loaded, and, really importantly, devices that come with clear promises from the vendor about long-term support and regular, predictable security updates.
So, choosing vendors carefully.
Very carefully. And often this might mean investing in enterprise-grade devices, which can be more expensive initially rather than cheaper, consumer-grade gadgets that often lack robust security features and have shorter support life cycles. It's about making security a factor in the buying decision from the start, not trying to bolt it on afterwards when the device is already a potential problem on your network. Make informed, security-conscious choices before it ever gets plugged in.
Okay, we've covered a lot of technical ground segmentation, hardening devices, monitoring, smart purchasing. But all the best tech in the world won't save you if you ignore the most critical piece of the puzzle: the people, the human element. As you said, the biggest vulnerability isn't always the tech. It can be that well-meaning employee just trying to make things easier, or maybe someone who's just completely unaware of the risks. So how do businesses actually build a culture of awareness around these IoT threats?
That's such a crucial point, and it really echoes what we saw in the source materials. Technology alone will never be the whole answer. Your employees, your facilities managers, anyone who might interact with or bring in these devices, they have to understand the risks involved. And just as importantly, they need to understand their own role in helping to mitigate those risks.
So training,
No.
policies.
Both. Organizations absolutely need clear, easy-to-understand policies about installing and using smart devices. But policies sitting in a binder don't do much. They need to be backed up by real, ongoing training programs, and not just boring PowerPoint slides. You need engaging, maybe even real-world examples like that fish tank story to illustrate the dangers and make it stick. The goal is to empower employees to be part of the security solution, not part of the problem.
And this helps deal with that shadow IT problem you mentioned.
Exactly. Shadow IoT in this case. These are the devices employees or departments buy and plug in without telling IT. Maybe someone gets a smart speaker for the break room music, or a department buys a wireless presentation dongle because it's convenient. They mean well, usually.
But IT has no idea it's there.
Right. And these rogue gadgets are prime targets because they are almost certainly unsecured, unmonitored, not segmented, completely invisible to the security team. You can't secure your network if you don't even know what's plugged into it. Building that culture of awareness means making every employee a lookout, someone who thinks twice before plugging something new into the network and knows who to ask first.
And that leads perfectly to the idea of setting up clear approval workflows.
Yeah.
It really does seem like every single device plugged in is fundamentally a security decision, and you can't secure what you don't know about or haven't explicitly approved.
Absolutely spot on. Our sources really hammer this home. You need a formal approval workflow. What that means is every new connected device, whether it's a fancy smart whiteboard or just a network-enabled coffee machine, has to be vetted and explicitly approved by the IT or security team before it gets anywhere near the corporate network.
Sounds like bureaucracy, maybe?
It might seem like it, but it's really about control and making informed choices. This process ensures that any new device actually meets your security standards before it's deployed. It makes sure someone changes the default password immediately, checks for initial updates, and puts it on the correct segmented network right from the start.
So it stops the uncontrolled spread of potentially vulnerable stuff.
Precisely. It prevents that dangerous proliferation of unmanaged, unsecured devices. And it brings accountability to the process. It's about being intentional and strategic about every single piece of tech that gets network access, turning what could be a silent, hidden threat into a known, managed asset.
So we've really taken a comprehensive deep dive today into this, hidden world of IoT devices in our business environments. We've seen how their convenience, their widespread adoption actually creates these significant, often just completely overlooked cybersecurity risks. From that smart TV in the boardroom, potentially listening in, to the coffee machine in the break room, maybe acting as a network bridge. These devices, if they're left unsecured, they really can become these silent entry points for cyber criminals.
Yeah, silent but dangerous.
And the consequences,
Yeah.
they're huge. Devastating for businesses. We're talking crippling data breaches, massive regulatory fines, serious financial losses, and maybe worst of all, that irreparable damage to your reputation. It's crystal clear. The attack surface, the number of ways attackers can get in, just expands dramatically with every new IoT device you connect.
It really does.
But the good news is you can take control. It starts with visibility, knowing what you have. Then comes network segmentation, securely configuring the devices themselves, and keeping a watchful eye through continuous monitoring. We really hope this deep dive has given you, our listener, the tools and the motivation to start that process.
And it's so vital to remember that smart TV in your office, it's not just a display anymore, it's a full computer, often with a microphone, maybe a camera, and definitely network access. If you leave it unmanaged, it's not just tech, it's a silent threat, potentially just hiding there in plain sight.
Yeah.
Security, as we've really unpacked today, isn't only about defending against attacks coming from the outside. Sometimes the biggest dangers are the ones we unknowingly invite inside ourselves, thinking they're harmless conveniences. The breaches we discussed, they're real. The consequences are costly, and the vulnerabilities are often shockingly simple to exploit. So the real question for you, the listener, as you look around your own office, your own environment, is this. How many silent spies, how many potential vulnerabilities are actually active in your business right now?
Visibility truly is power in this incredibly connected landscape we're all navigating. Understanding what devices you have, knowing how they're configured, and seeing how they're behaving, that's the absolute first step towards building a genuinely resilient security posture. The time to act on these insights is definitely now.
Thank you for joining us, and we will see you again on another episode of GTS Threat Scope. Please like, share, and subscribe if you find our content helpful. Also, please comment below and let us know which topic you would like for us to cover next. You are always invited to visit our website at gtsja.com for more ICT and cybersecurity consults and guidance.